Joseph was only 17 years old when his life began to unravel. He was the beloved son of Jacob, a young man favored above all his brothers. His father had given him a beautiful coat of many colors, a symbol of love and distinction. But what Joseph received from his father stirred jealousy in the hearts of his brothers. What made matters worse were Joseph's dreams. One night, Joseph dreamed that he and his brothers were binding sheaves in a field. Suddenly, his sheaf stood upright, while the sheaves of his brothers bowed down before it. On another occasion, he dreamed that the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. When Joseph shared these dreams, his brothers became furious. "Do you intend to rule over us?" they asked. From that day forward, their jealousy turned into hatred. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers as they grazed their flocks far from home. As Joseph approached in the distance, his brothers saw him coming. "Here comes the dreamer," they mocked. Consumed by envy, they plotted to kill him. But Reuben, the eldest brother, convinced them not to shed Joseph's blood. Instead, they stripped him of his colorful robe and threw him into a deep, empty pit. Imagine the fear Joseph must have felt: abandoned, rejected, betrayed by his own family. From the darkness of that pit, he could hear the voices of his brothers eating and laughing, while his future seemed to disappear before his eyes. Soon, a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed nearby. Judah had an idea. Why kill him when we can profit from him? For 20 pieces of silver, Joseph was sold as a slave and taken to Egypt. Meanwhile, his brothers dipped his coat in goat's blood and presented it to their father. Jacob believed a wild animal had killed his beloved son. His heart was shattered. Years passed. In Egypt, Joseph was purchased by Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Despite being a slave, Joseph remained faithful to God. Everything he touched prospered. Potiphar recognized God's favor upon him and placed Joseph in charge of his entire household. But trouble was waiting. Potiphar's wife repeatedly attempted to seduce Joseph. Day after day she pursued him. Yet Joseph refused. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he said. One day, after Joseph fled from her advances, she falsely accused him of assault. Potiphar believed her. Joseph was arrested and thrown into prison. Again, Joseph found himself in a dark place. First a pit, now a prison. It would have been easy to become bitter, easy to lose faith, easy to question God. But Joseph remained faithful. Even in prison, God's presence was with him. The prison warden noticed Joseph's integrity and eventually entrusted him with the responsibility over the other prisoners. While there, Joseph met Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker. Both men had troubling dreams. Through God's wisdom, Joseph interpreted them accurately. The baker would die. The cupbearer would be restored to Pharaoh's service. Everything happened exactly as Joseph said. Before the cupbearer left prison, Joseph pleaded with him, "Remember me when you return to Pharaoh." But the cupbearer forgot him. 2 more years passed. Then one night, Pharaoh himself had disturbing dreams. In one dream, 7 healthy cows were devoured by 7 sickly cows. In another, 7 full heads of grain were swallowed by 7 thin heads. None of Pharaoh's wise men could explain the dreams. Suddenly, the cupbearer remembered Joseph. He told Pharaoh about the Hebrew prisoner who interpreted dreams. Joseph was quickly brought before Pharaoh. Standing before the ruler of Egypt, Joseph declared, "I cannot interpret dreams, but God can." Joseph explained that the dreams carried the same message. 7 years of abundance were coming upon Egypt. Afterward, 7 years of severe famine would follow. God was warning Pharaoh so preparations could be made. Pharaoh was astonished. He immediately recognized God's wisdom in Joseph. At 30 years old, Joseph was appointed second in command over all Egypt. Only Pharaoh himself held greater authority. The boy who had been thrown into a pit had become a ruler. The slave had become a prince. The prisoner had become a governor. The dreams God gave him years earlier were finally beginning to unfold. During the years of abundance, Joseph stored vast quantities of grain. When famine struck, Egypt was prepared. People traveled from distant lands seeking food. Among them came Joseph's brothers. They stood before him without recognizing him. And just as God had shown in Joseph's dream, they bowed before him. The dream had come true. Joseph could have taken revenge. He could have punished them. He could have made them suffer for all the pain they caused. Instead, Joseph chose forgiveness. After revealing his identity, he embraced his brothers. Tears filled the room. His brothers were terrified. But Joseph spoke words that continued to inspire believers thousands of years later. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." What looked like betrayal became preparation. What looked like defeat became destiny. What looked like abandonment became divine promotion. God had been working through every pit, every prison, every setback, and every heartbreak. Through Joseph, God preserved countless lives during the famine and protected the family through whom the Messiah would one day come. The story of Joseph reminds us that God's plans are greater than our pain. The pit is not the end. The prison is not the end. The betrayal is not the end. If God has spoken a promise over your life, He is faithful to fulfill it. Just as He lifted Joseph from the pit to the palace, He can take the darkest chapters of your story and use them for His glory. Because what others mean for evil, God can transform for good.